Hi, we're going to talk about another dictator. This one is Joseph Stalin, who became the leader of the Communist Party in the USSR, formerly what we've been talking about as the Russian Empire. So his brief biography: he was born in poverty in 1878 in Georgia, which was a province in the southern part of the Russian Empire. He did have some formal education. He attended school to become a priest. He never joined the faith, however. Instead, he became an atheist and joined the Bolsheviks. And he joined the Bolsheviks after reading writings by Vladimir Lenin. He did change his name to Stalin, meaning man of steel, maybe foreshadowing what he was to become. And he was arrested and sent to Siberia several times for his work with the Bolshevik Party before World War I broke out. And we talked about Siberia was a place where they had a whole series of work camps, prison camps for especially political prisoners. So just as a reminder, the Communist Party in Russia began as the Bolshevik Party under the leadership of Vladimir Lenin. And you get the Bolshevik revolutions that start before the end of World War I. And then they changed their name in 1922 after they consolidated power by defeating the whites in the Russian Civil War. And they get the idea of communism from the writings of Karl Marx. And he said a communist society was one that was classless and that you could achieve after the proletariat overthrew the bourgeoisie. The communists, once again, they controlled the country, divided Russia into several self-governing provinces with a central capital in Moscow. So this is where we get the name the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, also known as the USSR, sometimes the Soviet Union, and this was a territory much of which had been part of the Russian Empire. One of their main focus points was to rebuild the Russian economy, and they were also interested, many communists were also interested in spreading the communist revolution to other countries. So they really saw it as an international movement, not just a Russian movement. Stalin's rise to power was slow but steady. In 1922, he became the General Secretary of the Communist Party, and this was at the point when Vladimir Lenin's health starts to fail. And Lenin never really trusted Stalin, but he kind of saw that he was gaining power. And one of the ways he gained power is he slowly put his own followers into key government positions, so that by the time Lenin died, Stalin is able to take control of the Communist Party because his supporters were in those key government roles. In 1928, when he takes control, Leon Trotsky is forced to go into exile, and he spends the rest of his life on the run trying to avoid assassination by Stalin's agents. Unfortunately, he's not successful. They hunt him down and they kill him in Mexico in 1940. So 12 years Stalin pursued Trotsky around the globe to eliminate him. Stalin was not as interested in the international communist revolution. Instead, he really wanted to concentrate on the development of Russia. One of the things he did is he repealed Lenin's new economic policy, which we talked about, allowed some aspects of capitalism to try to give people incentives to work hard and produce more. And he took complete control of the government. Stalin had a couple of economic policies. The first thing he did is institute a command economy where all economic decisions are made by the government. And he really focused on industrial growth and agricultural output. One of the ways he wanted to improve industrial growth was through what he called 5-year plans. And these were very ambitious quotas that were designed to speed up industrial growth, military manufacturing over the course of 5 years. So by the end of 5 years, whatever your product was, you had a quota or a goal that you were trying to reach in terms of production. These quotas, as I said, were very ambitious, and they were designed to increase the output of things like steel, coal, oil, electricity. These are the things we think about in terms of industrialization, things that countries need in order to industrialize. The flip side of this is, in order to meet these quotas, manufacturers had to cut down on producing consumer goods. So as a result, people in the Soviet Union often faced shortages of household items, things to buy, because so much energy and effort was going into this industrial production. Stalin also wanted to increase the agricultural output of the Soviet Union, and so he took over private farms and he combined them into these huge collective farms. And these huge collective farms were worked by hundreds of families. And again, the goal was to increase food production. There was a lot of resistance to the collective farms because he was taking away privately owned land, and millions died due to this resistance. People were arrested, they were exiled to work camps, and because the output wasn't always distributed efficiently, there were periods of famine. That being said, the collective farms did end up increasing the agricultural output of the Soviet Union. Under Joseph Stalin, the Soviet Union became a totalitarian state. Secret police were used very frequently. They monitored every aspect of Soviet society. They listened in on telephone lines. They read mail. And they had spies everywhere. And they were looking for these spies to overhear any sort of traitorous comment, even something like, "Wow, the bread lines are long today." There's also an element of religious persecution, as we talked about with totalitarianism. The communists were atheists, and so their main target was the Russian Orthodox Church. But again, we've talked about the anti-Semitism of Russia, and that continued as well. Stalin instituted strict censorship. He controlled all newspapers, films, radio, other sources of information, literature, visual arts. Everything was censored, and anyone who broke the censorship risked being imprisoned and sent to Siberia. The weird thing about Stalin is he did all of these things, but he did them in a way that people didn't realize that they were coming from Joseph Stalin. And so some of these political prisoners went to Siberia still praising Joseph Stalin and thinking that he must not know about what was going on in Russia, even though this was very much his policies. People called him Uncle Joe. Kids adored him. So it's a weird totalitarian state, but people didn't associate it necessarily with the power of Joseph Stalin. He was very paranoid about any challenges to his power, so he had a series of purges where he tried to eliminate anyone he thought might threaten his power. And these kind of were most noticed in what's called the Great Purge, where anyone who had a role in the Communist Party was threatened. Thousands of the original Bolshevik revolutionaries were arrested. They were tried in these fake trials, and many, many were executed. The police had to meet quotas of quote-unquote criminals to arrest, so they would use any trumped-up charge to bring people to these trials, and who faced either imprisonment in Siberia or execution. By the end of the Great Purge, Stalin had complete control, and he had killed or ordered killed between 8 and 13 million people. Over the course of his almost 30-year reign, the amount of deaths that are attributed to Stalin and his policies reached nearly 20 million people, and that's not even including World War II. So when we're talking about the death toll by Stalin, we're counting by the millions. The other kind of weird thing about Joseph Stalin is not only did he want to purge your life, meaning take your life away, but he also wanted to erase people from history. So once someone was purged, he would even have his people remove them from photographs. And if the photograph was reprinted, the person would no longer be there. So these are some men, and they're inspecting this canal. Nikolai Yezhkov is part of it. After he gets purged, Stalin's people replace him with just scenes of the canal and the wall. There's another, this is a famous book cover. So the original photograph has 4 men. The next version has 3 men. The next version has 2 men. And the last version is Stalin by himself. So as he was killing people, executing people, he was also trying to erase them from history. This one, you have Vladimir Lenin here, and you have Leon Trotsky here. After Trotsky's killed, you have Vladimir Lenin and no Trotsky. The other thing that Joseph Stalin would do is he would insert himself into pictures. So Vladimir Lenin was adored by the people. He was seen as the father of the communist revolution. So Stalin wasn't going to mess with him. But he did create some photographs where he inserts himself next to Lenin in order to kind of prove that he was closer to Lenin than he really was. And even here, looking at these 2 photos, this guy here is not in this photo. Okay, so in this one, it's not even it's not just Trotsky, it's some of the bystanders as well. So not only was Stalin willing to take away your life, but he also wanted to eliminate you from history. Hope this was helpful.